Hello, I'm John Manzella, and this is the Manzella Report. Attempting to predict short-term fluctuations in inflation is extremely difficult. However, if you look at the evolution of globalization, which has a major impact on inflation, accurately predicting long-term inflation trends is a bit easier. So let me start with what globalization is and how it's evolving. Advances in telecommunications, transportation, and finance led to the integration of national markets through trade and investment. This process, known as globalization, has lifted millions of people out of poverty and significantly boosted American standards of living. But globalization is like fire. It can cook your food, keep you warm, or burn your house down. It's been tremendous for American companies that produce products and services rich in intellectual property, and for U.S. workers engaged in lifelong learning. However, it's presented new challenges for companies that manufacture low-tech products and for employees with limited skills. Now, a major aspect of globalization has involved offshoring. This is the practice of moving production from high-wage countries like the U.S. to low-wage ones. Now, the offshoring of computer hardware in the 1990s, for example, resulted in a 10 to 30% drop in computer costs. In turn, sales of PCs, productivity, and growth soared. And in the end, many new jobs emerged in the US, far exceeding those lost to offshoring. But that's not all. Over the last several decades, China has been a primary exporter to the US of inexpensive products like clothes, toys, furniture, and electronics. This, combined with lower costs derived from offshoring, has enabled American consumers to buy much more with less, stretching the dollar in a way that has subsidized the standard of living for millions of middle and lower income Americans. This has undoubtedly put downward pressure on inflation. Now, according to the St. Louis Federal Reserve Bank, average inflation was 2.4% for the period of 1990 through 2020. How much downward impression offshoring and low-cost imports put on inflation is unknown. However, I'm guessing it's likely significant. But as globalization evolves, the inflation rate is likely to rise. And let me explain. Over the last several years, globalization has been adapting to a number of factors, including increasing Chinese costs, shifting trade trends primarily due to US-China tensions and the trade war, and COVID-19. Now, for several years, Chinese import prices, as well as the costs associated with offshoring there, have been rising for a variety of reasons. For one, China has a serious worker shortage due to its 1980 one-child policy. And although this policy has been terminated, the damage is done. China's workforce is now projected to contract by 20% by the year 2050. In order to attract workers from this shrinking labor pool, Chinese wages have risen by 170% from 2010 through 2020. In addition, the trade war begun under the Trump administration has added U.S. tariffs to Chinese imports, driving up costs to American consumers. Plus, as U.S. supply chains diversify away from China to minimize risks should U.S.-Chinese trade tensions worsen, and toward lower Asian countries like Vietnam, other problems are playing a role. Their working populations are small, their infrastructure typically poor, and their quality often lower when compared to China. And they can't match China's output. Since COVID-19 began and US-Chinese tensions have ramped up, we've changed the way we view and evaluate risk. In turn, US companies are focusing more on risk reduction than efficiency gains and tossing out just-in-time inventory strategies, which have often turned into just-too-late failures. To reduce threats to business, including those associated with future pandemics, many companies are no longer relying on any one source or supply or any single country, whether it's China or another nation. In turn, many U.S. firms are sourcing from a larger number of suppliers in different parts of the world. This is resulting in smaller scale purchases from a greater number of vendors, driving up costs. American firms are also stockpiling more supplies in varied locations, both in the U.S. and abroad, and this is another factor boosting costs. And finally, many American firms are backshoring production. This also is increasing the cost of goods unless manufacturing processes can be automated. Added together, it appears that one of the major benefits historically provided by globalization, that is, the seemingly endless supply of inexpensive products, will soon come to an end. While government deficits, the money supply, and other factors also impact inflation, those longer-term factors associated with globalization will be driving it up for years to come. For more on this topic, read my article in International Policy Digest or visit themanzellareport.com. Thank you.